Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to a special presentation of CodeX. We have with us the immortal, the incredibly talented, the amazingly awesome A.L. Kaplan from DC Comics and Boom Studios. Alan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's like so awesome to be back here with you guys.
It's amazing. It is. We are very happy to have you here to sit down and just shoot the proverbial BS and talk about comics, life, and everything in between. Guys, it's going to be an awesome interview. So I hope you are strapped in because we definitely are not. It's going to be amazing. Before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget you can find us on all the socials. All you got to do is type in at the CodeX station, and that is where you will find us, your favorite social media platforms, or where you're watching us right now. Make sure to hit the like, share, follow, and subscribe. It definitely helps us, and it helps you so that way you never miss awesomeness like this. Don't forget, we also have a Patreon that is right there. You can go ahead and check that out for the price of a expensive cup of coffee. If you feel like it, you can help CodeX be awesome, and you can enjoy some super cool perks on top of that. Before we really dive into the hard-hitting questions of what type of sake you're drinking and why you're not sitting on a box and in a chair, Kaplan, where can people find you on the socials and on the internet?
You can find me posting on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram at ALK Comics, and keeping more professional updates on my website, alkcomics.com.
Fantastic. All right. Now that the business is out of the way,
we do have one more bit of business before we get started, though. We do now have a sponsor, Kaplan, since the last time you were on. Just want to throw a shout out to them, and that is Dubby Energy. Right now, I'm drinking the big energy tiers, blue raspberry. It's amazing. Guys, you go to dubby.gg and you guys can get 10% off using our keyword CodeX. That's CODE-X at checkout on all orders.
There you go. W.GG, ladies and gentlemen. Now it is time. The shirts are loud. The drinks are tart and wonderful. And now it's time for the interview with A.L. Kaplan. The questions you won't hear anywhere else. How you doing today, man?
Yeah. I am photosynthesizing. It's like 70 degrees and sunny Seattle today, and loving it.
God, that's wonderful. All right, let's really get into this now. So the last time we talked, you were still doing work for Boom Studios, and I believe at that time you were doing work with R.L. Stine. Is that correct?
Yeah, Stuff and Nightmares.
Yeah,
I think that was just announced kind of around that time. It was in the thick of drawing it.
Yeah, and from then you moved on to doing covers, variant covers for DC Comics, and now doing interiors. So the question I want to ask you is, how does that feel?
It's pretty exciting. It's been a fun. I think at the end of the last time you'd kind of talked about, like, you asked me, like, what's my dream project? I was like, oh, I'd kind of like to draw X-Men, but I don't think I'm ever going to do a superhero thing. I was like, oh, just kidding, I guess.
Yeah. JK, yeah. I swear.
But it's been a fun journey of going to, the covers are great because you're just like, I got to make this one image look the coolest. And then, interiors, it's all about, the emotions and crafting the whole narrative. So it's good to kind of stretch both muscles and
now,
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to ask real fast, how did that process go through? I mean, like I said, last time we did talk, I mean, you really couldn't talk about it too much, but you did go into the whole R.L. Stine Stuff and Nightmares. You're like, I can't speak about this, but since we put it out there and it's on my website, how did that transfer happen from going from working on Stuff and Nightmares to doing covers for DC now? And interiors?
It was, I mean, on my end, it was pretty hectic because it's a lot of deadlines all at once. But yeah, one of kind of all editors looking at stuff. So theoretically, that looks good to have that work being done, and just, more chances for people to see the name out there. But it was definitely a lot of work all at once. The covers are at least fun because that's like, again, just you got to do, it's like one day, you just got to do like one illustration, make it look really cool. But the the circuit breaker stuff kind of happened when I was still drawing Stuff of Nightmares and trying to wrap, because it was supposed to be wrapped up in August, but deadline changed, and so it got wrapped up at like late October. And so there was a little too much work at once. I'm impressed by the industry people who just are working on so many titles, because that's a hustle.
So let's talk about that for a minute. Circuit Breaker, how did that come about? What was the process like from initial concept or the phone call even to creation and then the printed page?
Yeah, Andrea Shea is the editor who's kind of like the brain architect of DC Pride. She's awesome and very, very enthusiastic, and just, I don't know, the amount of work she puts into making all of that happen is just something I can't even comprehend. I appreciate it a lot. She contacted me and, had seen the assistant editor, Jillian Grant, was doing assistant editor work on the covers that I've been doing. So she had something to do with, they all talk and share stuff in the DC office. So they know, like they might be, the Gotham side might not be working closely with the Flash side, but they, they'll share stuff with each other. So I imagine that has something to do with it. But yeah, contacted me and was like, hey, we're looking forward. We want to create the first transmask superhero for DC. And, we've looked at your work. Like the sort of stuff you do, you have good character work with your webcomic. We think you'd be a good fit. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? We're looking for 2 stories plus the creation. And I was like, well, can't turn that down. So like, a lot of like, well, I'm finishing up interiors right now, but like, let's do this. And it was,
it wasn't a let me think about it for a second. Yeah, okay.
It was like, when's my deadline?
Yeah, there's a bit, because it is like the biggest difference I think between stuff like DC and working at Boom is, like Boom is more creator owned stuff, and DC like they own the rights to everything. So there's obviously I can't say no to doing this, but there is that doubt of like, I am just creating intellectual property for DC. They're gonna own this character and do whatever with this character, and that it's something that has to come from my heart a little bit, but it's just like ultimately not mine. And that's a very different process than any of the other, we've talked about. Like I came from webcomics, I've just like done every aspect of it. So from that to just kind of creating a character for a toy to put back in the toy box, right? Like
Right.
Really different process, and mentally. So there's not hesitation, but there's a little bit of like, oh man, this is gonna hurt. Like, you hear all those like stories of, a big X-Men fan, so like, Chris Claremont famously not a big fan of other people playing with his toys.
Right.
There's a lot of creators who are more, gracious about it. But it's
the good thing is though is that with a creation like this, your name is going to be attached to that forever. That will never be taken away. Every time people look at Circuit Breaker, it will say created by A.O. Kaplan. With that being said, though, how much of yourself was put into the character? Did you utilize any of past experiences or emotion or anything like that to put into Circuit Breaker?
Yeah, definitely. Because as I think so we talked in August, and I think this happened around like maybe October or something like that. So I was pretty new after moving, and like moved in the middle of doing Stuff of Nightmares. So I didn't have a lot of time to process all of that. So there was this kind of, as we're creating Circuit Breaker, one of the first before working on the first story, there was like, okay, let's come up with like the name and the power set and who the character is. And they're putting out this DC Book of Pride, which is just the character atlas of all the characters. The deadline for that was like November, and they're like, well, it'd be really cool to get this character in that because like that comes out before the Pride book, but like obviously you haven't written any stories about him. So like we had to come up with like an illustration and like a backstory, like all the data page fabricated for that before any of the character stuff was written, which was, so there was a lot of like, okay, like this is like week 3 of this conversation is like come up with the backstory and like that includes what the stories you want to do. So it was kind of a weird backwards process. But my point is that like I was in the middle of moving, I was learning a new job up here and all this stuff. So I think the character clicked for me when I decided to set him in Northern Nevada, which is where I'd moved from, because it was kind of like a way to be able to carve out time to process like leaving that place and all my feelings about Northern Nevada. So I just dumped that all into the character, and that's when the character really started to click for me, I think. So there is drank whiskey or pecan punches in bars and argued about Yucca Mountain and, you know, nuclear waste and stuff. So there's, you know, and sage grouse habitats and all that. So it's probably embarrassing to all my Northern Nevada friends. When they read it, they're like, God, what is this? But for the rest of you, maybe it's fun.
Now, with the character too, I mean, you're going through this whole process of moving and everything else. How many different concepts, drafts was there before you finally got to your final decision on what the character looked like?
Yeah, there was a bunch. It was a fun bunch of back and forth because they came to me. They're like, "Hey, we have an idea of what we want, but we're also totally open to whatever you want to pitch." And one of the original editors on the, you know, credit on the Lazarus Planet is Chris Rosa, who's an editor on The Flash. So he was involved from the very beginning, and they're like, "Hey, our pitch is we want a Still Force hero. We think that'd be fun. It's the villain power set. No one's really like, there's a lot of opportunity to tell stories with it because there's a couple, but you know, it's far less built out than some of the other stuff in the Flash mythos. So like, this is our pitch, and you know, it had to be part of this bigger event. So that there was a framework that I had to work in, but I had never read an issue of The Flash before. So I was like, I mean, that's cool, but like, I don't know The Flash, you know, so it was kind of intimidating to be like,
you're like, I'm going to know him now.
Yeah. So I gave him a couple pitches as, you know, I'm more in big fan of Swamp Thing and all that. So I was like, okay, like here's my pitch, you know, a couple pitches in different areas in DC that I was more familiar with. And, you know, so we talked about some stuff and, you know, but of course it has to fit into the greater Lazarus Planet thing happening. And so some of my ideas were like, well, we already have a story happening over there. So like, maybe not. And then as we talked about it more and, you know, I was reading a lot, just going through so many Flash comics to like get backstory on the Still Force. I was like, you know, this is actually really cool. I think this is a good idea. I think there's a lot to work with. And it felt additive in a way where, because so much of the Still Force had not really been explained or built out very thoroughly. I was like, actually, that's really fun because that gives me a way to play with something and be more additive as opposed to just like fitting myself into Arkham Asylum or something that's really built out, you know.
That gives you like a whole sandbox that nobody's playing in that you get to do pretty much whatever you want with.
Yeah, and that was cool. And you know, obviously the editorial team was very helpful there with like, you know, making sure that like I'm not disrupting what, you know, the amazing world building that's happened with all of the different forces and stuff with the Flash, you know. So they helped corral it and just give me, you know, recommendations of stuff to read. But yeah, but definitely gave me more to play with. That was
nice.
Great.
Well, let me ask you one final question on Circuit Breakers. So fan reaction has been overwhelmingly positive for the character. Was that something that you were expecting, or did that come as a surprise?
I mean, very welcome surprise. You know, as you were saying with like, you know, your name's going to be attached to it. There's like, yeah, I'm like glad people liked him because that could have been really bad. Because it's, you know, it's tricky with this stuff, especially like being the first trans masked character. It's like there's no one way to be trans, and that's a big burden to have one character. Like there's no way this character can represent everyone's experience because everyone has different.
Right.
And so it's trying to figure out like how do you tell add enough personal stuff and vulnerability into it that it's a real story, but not too specific that either it hurts me with vulnerability or it's something other people can't relate to.
Right.
So it was a definitely scary where I decided to take the approach of like, I'm gonna make you like a really specific dude. You know, like he's got a lot of personality and stuff. It's like I think that helps it. I'm not trying to say universal things about the trans experience. I'm like, well, this one dude feels this way. And the more specific of a person Jules is, the more I think that helps. And I'm glad that people connected with, I don't know, rodeo glam or whatever. I'm glad people connected with that because it was definitely a bit scary on the first, you know, like character, you know, art drop. I was like, oh God, I like just turned off Twitter and turned off notifications. I'm like, I can't look at this for a week. Like, everyone hates it.
You come back, 300 notifications.
Yeah, so
they're all good.
Yeah,
really, really happy that people enjoyed the character.
Well, with the character itself, like I did get to notice a bunch of design work, especially with the suit. And one thing I did see was like where the incisions was the lightning bolts. underneath. And I thought that was a cool concept. And so what I want to ask is, was there something that you knew you wanted to put into this character's like costume design that you were like, yes, this needs to happen? Or was there any like pushback against it? Like, is there something you wanted and you made it happen with the suit?
Yeah, the tassels. That was my like, I'm doing this. I don't care what you say. But in general, the editorial team was really, there was lots of structural help because it's, especially a character debuting in a big crossover event. There was a lot of like help in that way, but they really gave me kind of the respect and space to do what felt right with the character, which was great. So
let you be creative and let you decide what the character is telling you.
Yeah, we did go through like the lightning bolt kind of incision design. That was like, in general, like with design stuff, you always tell people like, don't use your first idea. Like, throw out your first idea, do a bunch more iterations, you'll come up with something better. But that was my first idea. Like, oh, connected to the Flash? Okay, cool. I got like, because the Flash always has lightning bolt stuff. So I was like, I got it. I know what the outfit's gonna be like. So I'm glad that one hit. But there was a lot of. It took a while to get to that costume. To try to figure out like, oh, do I want him to have like, in terms of stuff that looks dramatic on a page and it's fun to draw, like, do I want a cape? Like what should the character look like in that way? And so there was a lot of back and forth about outfit stuff before we landed on the vest. And it was really like, I didn't quite nail the rodeo thing for a while. That was because it was still like we're creating the look of the character as we're having to craft the backstory and all this. It was all kind of happening at the same time really fast. So, there was a lot of like coming up with who the character was and what their backstory was through the outfit. So until I think I added tassels at one point, I was like, oh no, I love the tassels. So they got like 5 different costumes with tassels in different places to try to see what worked. But there was some back and forth because like the Flash is really streamlined because he moves fast, right? So everything's got to be aerodynamic, and it's just like a solid color onesie. And I was like, but this character, like the Still Force, is opposite of that. So slowing stuff down, so he doesn't need to be aerodynamic. So the first I was like, okay, like baggy and loose stuff signals that. So I had a couple outfits, and they were like, well, like this looks really cool, but there's this other Steadfast is this other guy who uses the Still Force. Who like no one's really telling stories with him, but like
no one's touching Steadfast.
Recreated his costume, and I was like, oh shit, fine. Get rid of the baggy pants then.
No Jinkos, come on now.
Yeah. Why? Well, we do have a question from one of our team members, Sal Rowe. I'll throw it up on the screen here. Did you have any character or have a character that influenced you the most? I think it's going with the character of Circuit Breaker.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Not really, like not in terms of like playing off of anyone in DC, but I was more of like looking at what opportunities would be for storytelling. So like what haven't they done? And I think especially with the character being like on the non-binary side of things, it's like superhero comics, Western superhero comics are like nothing if not a really amazing study in like the spectrum of masculinity already. So it's like, well, if he's just like a super masked trans guy, it's like, well, it's just the same as Nightwing or whoever, because it's just learning how to be a man in the world. And it's like, well, everyone has to learn how to do that. So
right.
Trying to be like, well, but there's not a lot of sort of a less binary experience. Like that's a new perspective. So it was kind of, thinking about like, well, personally it'd be kind of fun to do someone who's more like, you can be just as punchy and annoying as all the other guys, but we already have that character. So if I create that guy just because he's trans doesn't mean the character adds anything really. And it's like, why would anyone else want to tell a story with him if you could just use Nightwing, who's going to sell books better,
Right. It's almost like a copy and paste at that point and be like, you could just Nightwing.
Yeah, because like Nightwing is gonna sell your book, not an. I mean, a new character might be like an who is this? But again, it helps to have Batman on the cover, right? So there was a lot of just like trying to less being inspired by something directly and more just looking at like what are the what's a niche that needs to be filled here that would be fun?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that answers your question, but let me know if it was something else.
It sounds like Circuit Breaker is probably one of the most organic characters
Yes.
that's been created in recent comic book history. And I think that is exceptionally unique because a lot of characters, I mean, are copy and pastes or
Exactly.
they're swaps and stuff like that. And Circuit Breaker is not that. And I think that is probably a fair reason why fans embrace the character so much. This is an original idea with original concepts, a very unique character, and the costume looks amazing. The backstory is intriguing. This is somebody I want to learn more about. And I just think
you don't find that anymore, especially with organic characters. It's hard to not only relate to characters nowadays, but it's not like it was when it was like 90s, 2000s, where every character had some trial and tribulation that they were going through that you could relate to. And now it's more along the lines of, oh, we've already seen this. I've already been through this. How do I get away from it? And a lot of people are just copying and pasting. You know, you look at like the whole Tim Drake and Jonathan Kent switching to sexualities like midway. A lot of people fell off, and they did. But to have an organic character come in, like I've said so many times on not just our podcast, but multiple shows, you need a character that is written well, organic, and one you care about. And this is one of those characters that I think it plays all those strings at once.
It hits all of those checkpoints.
Yeah. And Sal did say, yes, you did. Perfect answer.
Good. Yeah, that's really nice to hear. And I think it's tricky with superhero stuff because so many books are team books. And if you want to introduce a character in a team book, it's like, man, you got maybe 25 pages a month. And how much space do you get for each character to tell their story and to introduce them? And like with the Pride short, they're all team ups. And so I'm teaming up with Jess Chambers, who is a character I was not very familiar with beforehand. I remember when they were announced, it's like, here's a new Flash avatar and they're non-binary this time. And it was like, okay, cool. You know, like it's easy to get cynical about it because as you're saying, it's like, all right, here's kind of another carrier of the same mantle that we know. And now they have this identity. And there was a hard character for me to get into. I ended up really loving them. And, you know, talking with the creator of the character and finding out that he really loves the character and the editors really like them, which really helped me be less cynical about it. So like, oh no, like there's a stupid amount of heart behind all of this stuff, even if sometimes it doesn't land right for the reader, but like, oh no, they really cared. They just only had 2 pages to establish the character. And just like debuted in a team book where there's like, there's a lot of people in that cast. And
a lot of heavy hitters.
They're all new. And it's like, that's a hard fighting chance to have to be a character that anyone can like identify and, you know. Yeah. So I'm so thankful that they gave me this weird opportunity to be like, you want to like write a focused story. It's like, cool, thank you.
Now,
great insight from Andrea.
Sonny threw in a comment, and we do have a question from Kristen too as well. Give you props for having the courage to make a new character such as Circuit Breaker, from Sonny. And
that goes right into what we were just talking about too. That's perfect.
And Kristen had a question about Stuff of Nightmares. Here we go.
Ooh.
So Kristen says, as a horror fangirl, which she most definitely is, what was the best part of doing an adult horror comic with R.L. Stine? And in a world with so many horror icons, where did you draw inspiration for the artwork?
I mean, I think I have given you guys my horrible like style as a bubblegum ball metaphor. But especially with this, there was, you know, talking with the editors and, you know, with R.L. Stine, it's like, you know, he really loved the old like EC Comics horror stuff vibe. So it's like, I knew he like that was something he was really into. And I was like, well, that stuff is great. So I love that also. So it's fun to kind of like look at that. But there's some more kind of like stylistic choices that they make that I don't want to make and don't want to, you know, so there's not like compromising what I want to draw in terms of mimicking that, but just looking at like, what are the cool vibes? Like, how do they draw spider webs? Like, how do they make this look cool and dramatic, and taking cues from that? And, you know, one of my favorite horror comic artists is, of course, Mike Mignola. So trying to, you know, learn as much as I can from the master, which is like, oh God, I'll add 40 more lines than he will to everything. So. always fun to look at that.
Well, let me ask you, like, with progression of your craft, right? Compared to where you were when you did work with Jude Ellison Doyle on Maw, which is an amazing series.
Very.
From that point all the way up to your current work with DC, and if you're doing any work with independents like Boom or anything like that, how do you think your craft has progressed from Maw to now?
I love that question. Yeah, there's comics specifically is such a interesting art form because it's always very just like it's always been quick turn. It's always just
Mhm.
tight deadlines, quick turn. So how do you tell the most with the least? And so you look at just the greats of like people like Alex Toth, who you're just like, man, you have like 5 different shapes and 3 lines, and you're communicating so much. And that's I think why Mike Mignola is such a like inspirational artist to me, but to a lot of people also, is his style is so pared down but so evocative because he knows how to uh, really leverage his compositions and how he stages things and where he puts the light so that things are in shadow and where the rendering is, because his stuff is so simple, but it gives the depth, the feeling of a lot of texture, because there's the whites are blown out and the blacks are blown out, but the mid-tone, you get all the texture right there, so it feels really rich even though there's like 2 lines. And just learning stuff like that, I think, is it's easier to analyze it and to say those things than to actually do that.
Right.
And so there's a kind of a constant learning how to like, yeah, I'd use fewer lines if I could find where the good line was. Sometimes I use 3 lines because I don't know where the perfect line is. So there's, the more practice, the easier that gets. So it's been so great to work on these, both, working on other people's stories and trying to figure out like, well, they have a different vision for a staging of a scene than I would. So now I got to learn different ideas and kind of like different directorial views in this stuff. And so that was super helpful to have to, learn a little bit from their sort of techniques. And yeah, just figure out how can I make as much things silhouettes as possible. And
Nice.
which all helps with horror, right? Just, like be more evocative, be more creepy. Love it. Render less.
Right. Well, especially with your covers. Now, when you were doing the variant covers, I gotta admit, I could pick those things out from a mile away because I loved how all your work was on them. From starting with like webtoons to going to Boom to DC, do you think your style of art has changed at all from the beginning to now? Because honestly, when I see it, I can still see your work in what you do, but I can tell you're almost like there's a little bit of a difference from the almost like the creator owned to the superhero aspect of it. Has it changed at all or progressed since then?
I think it has. And I mean, there's always, I think art is always kind of a lifelong process of learning how to see and how to translate what you see through how you mechanically do it. So I think it's much more difficult to never change your style than to have a constantly progressing style. But, I think looking at like the older webcomics I did, they even with Full Spectrum Therapy was a webcomic I did from 2015 to 2019. And at the beginning, it's much more complex, but it doesn't read better, right? It's like there's kind of what I'm saying with line work, where there's just kind of too much going on. And then after there's a certain shift in there where I really started figuring out composition better. And all of a sudden the panels are clearer and like everything is staged more interestingly. And I can draw less stuff in the background, but still have it feel the same. And I think that I've definitely been getting better at figuring out like, where does the detail need to go to shift your focus to make you focus on the right thing? Where do I need to put the detail? How much can I get away with just being a scribble? And I think there's definitely some parts in the middle of Stuff of Nightmares where I was drawing comics on a moving box, where there's some stuff in there that is maybe a little too scribbly and pared down, that would prefer looked a little tighter. But at the same time, I think that so much of comics is learning how to like, it's always good. There's always going to be stuff like that. So if you can still make it read well, even if that panel doesn't look great. If you can kind of learn where to let go and then save yourself for the big impressive panels that are actually meaningful in the story, that you'll at least tell a good story, even if some parts of it are like, yeah, don't look at that.
Sometimes the most unpredictable stuff, though, turns out to be some of the greatest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
So,
just never
and
know.
that leads into a question again that we have in the comments here. And that is, have you ever had a bad rut and how did you break out of it?
Yeah, that's, I mean, always. You know, that's the struggle with art, and especially there's some wonderful graph that you can find online of like your sort of, it's a general progression of art skills, and it's like a double helix, and you get like on one side it's like, you know, how you're seeing your work, and then as you're learning new things, you kind of see your work as being worse because all of a sudden you're learning these things, you're like, well, I can't do that. And then your technique gets better, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, man, I'm the best artist ever. And then you learn more things, you're like, oh no, I'm horrible. And so like you're always getting better, but you kind of run into these ruts where all of a sudden you just like see the way someone shades a hand, and you're like, I can't draw hands. I've never been able to draw hands, and you just kind of, you know, get that sort of jealousy. And I think that, you know, so there's a natural part of it that once you go through it a couple of times, like, oh, I think I'm in one of the ruts where like I've learned things, but I haven't caught up technique wise yet, you know. And sometimes it's just like, all right, I
They're
gotta go
here,
push.
they just haven't transitioned to here.
Yeah, and you're just like, gotta push through this. And you know, so sometimes it's like, if you can take a break, take a break. If you can switch up your mediums, like, all right, I'm just gonna do warm-ups in colored pencil, or just, you know, switch the gears of your brain so that you're not, you know, you can kind of force that change to happen by just like switching up your scenery, switching up your tools, switching up your routine.
Nice.
I find that really helps, but you just do have to push through it.
Well, let me ask you this, like a quick sub to that. Do you prefer to draw physically, or do you use digital?
I prefer traditional media, and so much of it is like, it's ink. Once the line is there, it has to be good because it's a lot of effort to use whiteout. And I think with digital, it's so much easier to be really precious about it, and to just like, oh, that line doesn't look good, undo. Oh, it doesn't look good, undo. And I'm so impressed by people who do comics digitally, because I can't make deadlines if I'm just worrying about perfectionism. And you can just zoom in infinitely, like, oh my gosh. So with a, you know, 11 by 17 inch Bristol and you know, pen and ink, it's like it's a lot of it, you know, it's difficult to learn it, but for me it's a lot faster because I just gotta, so much of the learning is how do I do it fast and good enough the first time, as opposed to how do I tinker away to make it perfect after a long time. And that's a wonderful process. People make wonderful artwork that way, but it doesn't work for me with my attention span and with my deadlines. I can't work like that. So I'm impressed by people who can, and you know, it works for other things, but for comics, like, just gotta be pen and ink.
Right on.
But color is definitely digital. I don't understand.
Color is definitely digital.
You do all those digitally. It just seems like a lot. I've been trying to think about doing covers with traditional colors. Like, all right, time to figure out gouache. But that's a lot more of just like, okay, you know, if I continue to do these covers for DC at a certain point, that, you know, like, then you can sell originals, and that's a way to, you know, kind of create a collector's item. So there's a reason to do that traditionally that thinking about, but at this point, my not doing stuff in acrylics, my traditional coloring skills, it's going to take way too long and a little too much of a mess. I got 2 cats, they're going to knock that stuff over, so just do that on the computer for now.
Well, I've got 2 questions for you. One is from Wes, but the other one is like, out of all of the genres of comics that are out there, what's the one you haven't done yet that you want to do? And I hope the answer is science fiction.
It is absolutely science fiction. Like, that is all.
Now you're just trying to make happy. Like, I feel like I should, like, I'm not even here now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I've done like a lot of my personal stuff is science fiction, so it's I have dabbled in it, but I haven't done it. I guess no one's paid me for it. I mean, well, publishers have not paid me for it.
Fair enough.
So that I guess that's my, you know, like, looking for you know, if someone's pitching me something to draw interiors of for a writer, I've been waiting for a cool sci-fi pitch, because that would be fun to just explore someone else's mind with that stuff.
That would be amazing. I want to see you bring back Weird World of Fantasy and just do nothing but 50 style UFOs. That would be
That would be
amazing.
so fun. Yeah, someone
Right?
pitch me that. Come on. Too lazy to write it myself.
DC, if you're
Yeah.
hearing, Adam
Come on.
Strange, UFOs, 50s action and adventure, A.L. Kaplan doing artwork. Hey, guess what? I'll write it. So there you go.
I'll co-write.
Perfect.
DC,
Done.
listen.
It's money, DC. It's money.
Sorry, Sonny, you're kicked out.
But Wes here has a question. He says he is not allowed to wear his Yankees hat, which is very true anymore, or else he's fired. What team do you?
Yeah, I had to tell him that yesterday.
What team do you think he should wear hat wise going forward?
The White Sox.
White.
Thank you.
Oh,
Known winners.
now you're appealing to Jamie. Uh-oh.
Yeah, look, I got brownie points. That's great.
Yeah, my a lot of my family's
The Saki's kicking in, isn't it? There,
so White Sox.
White Sox. There we
The
go.
Mariners. Maybe I should start paying attention to the Mariners, but
No.
No.
White Sox it is.
Definitely just keep with the Sox.
yeah, did watch a lot of baseball when I lived in Reno, but we had just claimed Bay Area stuff, and I should not mention the A's. I hear there's stuff going on with that, so I'll leave Bay Area, but soft spot for the Giants, I guess.
Yeah. Don't worry, Wes. I'll send you a White Sox hat. I got a
The
couple.
White Sox
Wow.
have good colors too,
The old White Sox logo. It's got to be the old one with the batter, and it says Sox right on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, Sal's got a good one for you. I think we touched on it a little bit, but not too much. Obviously, with the con schedule.
Yeah,
What's your con schedule? Will you be on TNT East Coast anytime soon?
I'm going to be at Rose City Comic Con in Portland in September for sure.
Kevin could probably make that one.
Yeah, I'd love to say hi. Let me know if anyone's here. I'm not scheduled for anything on the East Coast. Hopefully soon. Gotta figure out con schedules, and it'd be cool if DC wants to send me out to somewhere. That'd be great. I've been trying to get out to New York, either for FlameCon or New York Comic Con or MoCA or something. That's my goal, because I haven't been in New York and it seems like a cool place. I hear it's a fun city. So
We hear good things about Baltimore Comic Con too.
Ooh.
And yeah, that's what I was gonna say. If by any chance next year you say I'm going to Baltimore and you let me know on Twitter, I am flying out to Baltimore. You'll meet up with me, Sale, and Dan.
That'd be cool. I hear
Probably.
Baltimore's fun too. I tabled at SPX once, and I have never gotten in since then. So I'd love to be back at SPX. Not that a lot of my current work is very small press at all, but hopefully someday.
So, question from Kristen. So, what I'm hearing is a White Sox science fiction comic in 50 style to appease Tim. As long as I am like some background character, make me the vice president or something that has.
All you have to do is take a picture of Kevin Smith, digitize it
right here
into
I'm
cartoon, and it works out perfect. Well, we're trying to appeal.
Oh, fair enough. Right on. Market value. I get it.
Yeah, we got to boost the book somehow.
Just make me the vice president. I just drink like overpriced espressos that have too much in there, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm very confident in it.
Yeah.
Done.
It's the way to operate.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
But yeah, the full spectrum therapy, that webcomic I was talking about that I did, is a weird horror alien stuff. Main character's a baseball player. I don't know. Maybe it'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here first.
Story, but...
It's an exclusive. It's going to be a bizarre alien love story based in the 50s, having to do with America's favorite pastime and espressos.
Why does this feel like the American dream?
It's done.
Done.
And he's going to wear loud shirts and.
I will wear a loud shirt the next time I see you, Ale. I promise.
I'll hold you to that.
I thought I was gonna be the promotional piece for the show, but obviously I was wrong. You two other stars. I'm just here for eye candy.
Okay. Someone's got to do it. Thank you for your sacrifice.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I trust me. I'm behind the scenes 90% of the time, and on a camera,
It's hard work.
10. So it's hard work to make this
Oh
work.
my God.
But I do want to ask, because I'm always excited for your work. I check the website at least once a month just to see if you got any new variants, because I do, and I posted a few of them on our Twitter that I've been picking up, like every variant cover you got, anything you're getting interior wise. Stuff Nightmares was amazing, Ma. Amazing. Everything you've done so far, even with Circuit Breaker. I mean, you're just killing it in the business right now to me. Is there anything that you could talk about that you got coming up in the future that you're excited for, that you want people to know about, especially me, because I'm a fanboy now? So,
well, I do have to plug final order cutoff for the DC Pride comic book is the 30th, which is
yes.
2 days from now. So yeah, very happy with the
yeah.
story that I did for that. That's my second Circuit Breaker thing. So that's announced. Everyone knows about that. But gotta yell at everyone to pre-order that. And after that, I've done some interior pages for DC and a project I can announce. But if you like mushrooms and you like Killer Croc, you might be interested in it. So look out for that. Can't tell you what it is. It's a secret apparently. But
like, why do I feel like this is the perfect Super Mario setup for some reason?
If only. But I think that's out in June. And I just did a very fun cover for something that's probably not going to be out until like October. So I can't really love that cover, but can't talk about that either. So it's the fun lips are sealed sort of moment for work.
Yes, but you can let me know often.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, whatever he tells us once we hit end stream, you'll never know until after it's announced.
Jamie's lock and key. We had Daryl Banks. I asked him a question. He answered it, and Tim's still trying to get me to tell everybody.
What did we talk about with Daryl Banks real quick? Let's talk about
that. A lot of things. Back to AL Kaplan.
What's the dish? Yeah.
Right? Yeah. No, it was just about Kyle.
We got Kaplan here.
You
kind of have to let it out now.
No, I tell him off air, just like he's going to tell us off.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Just block me and then post it all and then unblock me. So
yeah, right. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Closer every time.
No, you're not. You're actually losing.
So
I have the high ground.
I'm going to take the low road and take the dirt road to the main road. And I'm going to ask you, Alan, favorite character that you've drawn so far for DC?
I mean, like,
well, obviously it's Circuit Breaker.
Yeah, like that feels like the easy answer, but
Circuit Breaker aside,
because it is, I've loved drawing Killer Croc. I did not care about this character very much. Like, so this is kind of stupid, but like the first time I really remember reading him is in a Brian Azzarello and Edward Risso's like Batman Noir, which I had as the Batman Noir, which is not what the book is called, but I had that printing of it. I can't remember what those stories are, but it just printed.
Was it black and white?
Yeah. Eduardo Risso, I love his art, and really, good person to study if you want to learn, fun compositional techniques and that sort of stuff. And there's Killer Croc is in that, but he's just kind of like a dude. He's like he's like an ugly dude, and they talk about he has a skin condition or whatever, but he's like not a crocodile man, and it's in black and white. And that story really stuck out in my mind. So like I kind of forgot that he's actually a crocodile man, which is really fun to draw. So it was had a blast doing that. It's not a character that I expected. I didn't go in being like, heck yes, I've always wanted to draw Killer Croc. But now I'm just like, give me more. I want to draw.
He kicks in the door at the DC offices. I want the Croc right now.
I am not leaving this office.
Yeah, I told the editors because like part of one of the most famous characters who is used in the Still Force is Gorilla Grodd, and I would love to draw Gorilla Grodd. So I told them, it's like, give me gorillas, please.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
I'm so glad you brought that up because it was 7:00 this morning. I haven't slept, and I'm talking to Tim. I'm like, I did 2 hours of research on this. I'm like, and with the Still Force, all I can remember is Gorilla Grodd had the Still Force, and he's like, you researched for 2 hours just to remember that? I was like, unfortunately, yes, this is my life now.
He didn't have
a super villain moment of baby version of the turtle and a baby carrier on his chest to try to end the universe with the Still Force. Just iconic.
Wow.
Oh, amazing.
So I had to follow that up somehow. So I went cowboy.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen in the chat right now, if you got any other questions before we wrap this up, please go ahead and get them in now, and we will fire them right out. Oh yeah, go for it.
There we go. We got, if there is one Marvel character that you could bring into the DC universe, who would it be? Yes, just one.
I'm interested to hear.
Why do I feel like it's going to be an X-Men character, and why do I feel like it's going to be Nightcrawler?
Yeah, I mean, Nightcrawler would be really fun. I'm trying to.
He's gonna bam from everywhere. He's gonna bam from Marvel over to DC.
He feels like most likely. So because if I have to write the story of them getting there, then like that's a fun, because like the current X-Men thing with Krakoa, like it'd be kind of fun to like. I was thinking about like, man, because like the Avengers aren't really allowed on, you know. So it's like,
They're like,
would they allow Superman on? Like that'd be kind of so. Like I was kind of actually thinking about that. Like, ooh, who wouldn't be allowed on Krakoa right now? But someone like, you know, Ilyana Rasputin is always great. She could teleport. She could get over to the DCU. You know, like if anyone's gonna make it over, her, Nightcrawler, someone, an X-Men character. But teleportation powers would be helpful, so that'd be fun.
Right on. There we go. Magic and Nightcrawler in the DCU. Let's make it happen, DC. Come on.
The reason I asked is because I forgot. I'm trying to remember. I did watch it not that long ago, our last interview, but there was one Marvel X-Men character that you wanted to draw, and I couldn't remember who it was.
Uh-oh, I said something dumb. Yeah, I don't know, but I do.
That's why I feel like it was Nightcrawler.
I mean, I do love Nightcrawler a lot. Cypher is my favorite character. He's another X-Men character, and would be kind of fun with the Flash stuff because his power is he can learn any language, and so there's with all of the kind of the different. The Speed Force and the Still Force and the Sage Force and all of this, you get this kind of like different perception and all these different ways of interacting with the world. And I feel like he'd be a useful guy to tap for that sort of information. And he's cool and needs good stories. So take him in.
Right. So we got another 2 questions. First one is from Facebook user. I don't know who it is. So whoever it is, throw your name in the chat so that way I know.
Facebook user says,
if you could create a new Marvel DC amalgam character, which 2 characters would you combine?
Oh my god. I had to plug in my laptop for a second. give me a chance to think about that one.
Kevin, you're not the only one, buddy. You're not the only one.
Yeah, Kaplan's over here like, I did not expect this to be this much fun.
Did a tour of the corner of my apartment. Oh, man, who would you combine? I mean, now who do I want to like? Killer Croc and
Killer Croc.
Who would be fun to mix with the, you know, Killer Croc could be a good demon sorcerer. So let's mix him and Magic together. that's my
him and Magic. That'd be insane.
Killer Croc and Magic. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, no one's gonna greenlight that, so I'll just keep pitching.
I would. Kidding me?
To pitch on air.
Okay, that was from Dan.
You've got Marvel editors watching this interview right now. Killer Croc and Magic. Got it.
Everyone's just like,
yeah. That's the next lineup in 2028. And then Sonny had another question. What would you say to someone who isn't a fan of Circuit Breaker just because of their pronouns?
Well, lucky you have like the rest of every other DC character to read about, and they all have more stories anyway. So you got nothing to complain about, man.
I think the only reason I think he brings this up is because we did have a discussion about this on our podcast. Mm-hmm. There was speaking of the Flash, because it comes out of the Still Force, it's part of the Flash kind of lore. Yeah. There was a character from Future State. It was a Flash. It was the character was non-binary. They used it for Future State. They showed this character in one issue and totally left the character hanging. Like, we have not seen it since. And I think that's where it's stemming from. Yeah. Not so much of a kind of like, I don't want to read this because of the pronouns, but it's more along lines, I think, of how trying to find the right verbiage for it.
I don't even know who the character is. I didn't read Flash Future State, so I can't be part of this.
As you gather your thoughts, that character is Jess Chambers, who's the character that I'm writing for the DC Pride team up. So they have that character is because I was kind of talking about them earlier, just like I had to get into that character to write them, and they're one that didn't really have a good chance to land right. And the people who love this character love them. But as you're saying, it's like, I think they're in this one book and then they're gone, like, because they're in that book.
That's what I was trying to get to. They're in this one book. You set them up with the pronoun or with their pronouns the correct way, non-binary, and everything else, and then they're just gone. Yeah. So it's kind of like, what do you say to somebody that, you know, do you stick around? Do you wait for more? Is this going to be a character that's going to last? You know, it's one of those things.
It's the hardest thing about this, right? Is like, especially with, you know, thinking about like what to do, like thinking about Circuit Breaker and like all of, you know, seeing like how much people have liked this character and like the heartbreaking reality of like, is this just going to be another character that you see like maybe once a year in a DC Pride book,
Mhm.
right? Which is kind of what has happened to Jess. And Jess, there's a younger version of that character that's in the Multiversity Teen Justice, not younger,
Yes.
like that. So that character is the breakout character in that series. But that's what I was saying before. Like that's like a team. There's like 7 main characters in that book, and it's really everyone's kind of fighting for page space. It's really difficult for those writers. They try to introduce a bunch of cool people, but like, man, none of them got a fighting chance because there's so many characters in so little time, and they did as good as they could. And so Jess got to kind of be a breakout character in Future State, but that's another team book, So
right.
They're fun in that, but it's like, okay, they have like, is there one panel where it's just that character alone in the panel? Probably like maybe not, right?
Right.
And that's, and that's like, and they did get comics in the last 2 Pride anthologies, and that's it for that character. It's like, put them on a lineup somewhere, but
right. And that's my biggest thing is because I every time there's a character, whether again, excuse me if I'm mistaken with any of the pronouns or the right verbiage here, correct me if I'm wrong. But anytime it's a change of sexuality, anytime it's a pronoun change, anytime it's just a change in the character that is already established and not the norm, it feels like they can't write the character to the extent of what that character should be, so everyone loses interest.
Like the character can't grow.
Yeah, there's no room to grow, and like we were talking about with Jess, I was excited for it because it was the first one in the Flash family, and I use quotations because of the fact that we don't know what's going to change in the future. And it felt like the character was great, but they just didn't do anything. I'm glad you got it now because maybe finally we got good hands, and it's kind of sad for me to see. And I've said this so many times: is these characters are established and it's an organic character, but it just doesn't have the momentum.
Yeah, it's
behind them, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, and there's so many factors, right? And like sometimes the character doesn't land right, and sometimes they do. And like I think every case probably is a little bit different with what happened in this case. Did they not expect people were going to latch onto this character, so they didn't plan other books? And like publishing timelines are so drawn out that if they want to start a series with like Circuit Breaker, it's going to be in production now and it might not drop until next year, and you're not going to hear about it for years. So sometimes it is like, oh god, now there's like people like this character, let's make something with them, but you're still not going to see it for a year. And then so that could be the case with Jess. Maybe there is something like I don't really know. But then other times I
feel like you do, and that's one of the things you can
I really wish I could tell character because I really came to love them writing them. But it is it is hard of just like, does whatever sort of like marketing and publishing, whoever has to okay books, right? Like an editor might just like really as my editor, Andrea, that main editor on the Circuit Breaker stuff, she was like, I'm going to be so obnoxious pushing everyone to use Circuit Breaker. But at the same time, like, she really wants it to be organic and not just for not the like Poochie thing from The Simpsons. Right. There's like a Poochie's introduced, and now everyone has to talk about Poochie and how they're best friends with Poochie, right? And it's like, that's not organic, and that feels forced, and that sucks. So it's like, she'll be like, hey, you're doing a Flash series, put this guy in there. But if the writer doesn't want to write the character, then the character's not going to get used, right?
Yeah. Right.
So I'm sure there is, as you're kind of saying, there is probably sometimes that might be the case where the creative team is like, I'm a little too afraid to touch that. I don't know how to do that, like to deal with this identity or whatever. I don't know how to do that organically, and I don't want to make a mistake. So I'm just going to not go there,
and that's why they bring you on. You draw for 3 different books, and now you're one of those people.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that is one of the nice, I think DC has been doing a better job of this, right? It's like getting people who can tell stories to tell the stories, because you'll hopefully come up with a nice product that way, but then also just have people who have something to say with them. And just, again, more diverse voices means you can tell more stories. And I think that's a good thing. And it is a heartbreaking thing with these characters of like, this guy's so cool. And then you're like, okay, I'll see you next year in a Pride special, and then never another story. And then
that's what it felt like to me. It was like, we got this character. It was supposed to be huge in I was reading so much about how I was supposed to be playing the Flash family even more, and I was just like, all right, another member, cool. I'm gonna be all over this. And then it was just a letdown because I never saw him unless it was the Pride issue.
Yeah,
Like,
I really hope that I think with Jess specifically, because the character like originates from Earth 11, which is the funny like gender swap universe. So that was kind of like their origin, which that's cute.
Yeah.
But then they end up, being able to kind of like dimension, like however they get to future state, which there's not a story like we haven't heard that story yet. That's a cool story. Someone write that. But then they end up getting into the Prime Earth timeline in future state, but future state is still like 20 years in the future. So it's one of those like that character specifically, I think is difficult to put in a book because it's like, well, they're not in the main timeline. So you tell a really specific book, and I think Jess could be the main title on a book, and you could just write a book about them. But maybe hopefully
Elseworld title, whatever it may be. I mean,
utilize Elseworlds. That would be amazing. Yeah, absolutely.
It would be cool. I hope that there's more kind of chasing of that sort of stuff. I mean, I think like again, the opportunity I was given with Circuit Breaker to be like, here, tell a focused story about this character to introduce them was such a wonderful opportunity, and I hope that more characters get it. I know the Spirit World stuff is another the lead of like I think that is the that was like another character that debuted in the Lazarus planet who was debuted and then like continuing on, and they get an ongoing series about that character, and I think that's them trying to do that right because that character I believe is also non-binary. So that's I think them really trying to make good on that as opposed to like here's just another character that's really cool that you're gonna see once and then never again. So hopefully that's a success, and I think reader support is everything for a big publisher like this. So if people read Spirit World and really get behind that book and like John Constantine, how can it be bad? The main character has a cool sword and has like ghost powers, Cascade, like it's going to be a fun book. And I think that if that has support, that shows them that readers want more of that sort of stuff. So it theoretically green light stuff for other characters, but like, it's tough.
I think I can safely say for all of Codex how much of a great time we have had sitting down with you today. Every time we sit with you, it never feels like a structured interview. It always feels like friends getting back together after months apart, starting right where we left off. And I love that aspect. And as always, the door is open at Codex for you to crash anytime you want to.
Any show you want to jump on, be my guest. I will make more than enough room for you to come in. But I do have one more question, because there is something you alluded to earlier that kind of led to my Daryl Banks statement, I think. Earlier when you were talking about, this is the Gotham wing over here of DC, and this is that.
Yeah.
In our interview with Banks back in the late 90s, early 2000s, he was talking about there was tiers. So one floor would be Batman, one floor would be Green Lantern, one floor would be, Wonder Woman, and then
Superman,
JLA. Yeah. Is it still kind of like constructed like that? Is there certain levels to each room or floor, or is there?
I mean, I don't have a good answer to that because the way the publishing industry has changed since that time, so less centralized. Like Marvel had a bullpen at that point, and it's like no one works in house anymore at all. Everyone's work for hire. So like so much of the actual structure has changed. And I don't know how many of these editors are not working from their homes. Like, I don't know if the DC office is actually open right now. I assume it might be, but they might also be working from home. So that might be a big equalizer. But I know that the editing groups are at least pretty intact like that. And I'm sure there is really tiers. I mean, like
when you get that email, does it say like Lazarus Pit?
Yeah. But I know because every time I talk to another editor, like, hey, I'm coming from the Gotham wing or whatever. I'm like, okay, so they at least they use that terminology. It means something within their corporate structure at this point. But I don't know if it still relates to the actual architecture of how the office is set up.
Well, that is definitely a question we will ask you again next time.
Yeah, maybe I'll have more insight.
Yeah, he's gonna come, but he's gonna message or DM me on Twitter and be like, "You were right." He's got like video footage.
God.
He's like, look,
This is A.L. Kaplan live from inside DC Studios. You will never guess. Jamie Wojcik from CodeX Station was correct.
yeah. This bathroom door has the Batman symbol on it, so I'm on the Gotham.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's back there. You'll never guess. All right. Before we get out of here, Alan, please, once again, thank you so much for giving us your time and coming on here and sitting with us.
I know this was a work in progress. A lot of DMs back and forth, definitely with the time scheduling. But I gotta admit, this is my favorite time to sit down and just talk with you. It's always amazing.
Dude, as soon as we confirmed it, and I reached out to Jamie, was like, Kaplan's coming back. What? Yeah. All right. When?
I'm like, I got questions, man.
Well, no, it's always a pleasure, and like you guys have been so supportive of my career for a while, and I really appreciate it. It's great to see you guys grow too, and just all the fancy graphics.
Thank you so much.
Love to chat. And,
it's like I told you, we're the soccer moms on the sideline that we're so proud. We're so happy. Kaplan could kick that goal. That was so great. Good footwork there, son. Good job. Way to go.
Sounds like you guys.
And I'm the dad coach, just disappointed in myself.
Yeah. Someday you'll be telling me to kick harder. So
you can do so much better.
Before we get out of here, where can people find you on the socials and on the interwebs?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr at ALK Comics. I post mostly comics. Every once in a while you get plant photos, but try to keep it to artwork. And then I do more professional updates on my website, alkcomics.com.
Perfect.
Well, real fast, Tim, before we end this, I gotta just say, thanks, Mom.
Yes, thank you, Mom. Absolutely. And speaking of moms, you can find us on all the socials. All you got to do is type in.
How does that?
I don't know. It's a good transition. All you got to do is type in at the CodeX Station on your favorite social media platforms. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and follow wherever you're watching us right now, so you don't miss more awesome content like this. Don't forget go ahead.
Don't forget that we do have a website, thecodexstation.com. It's your one-stop shop for everything Codex. Get some merch, meet the team. We have a full roster now. It's great. AL, check it out. And we have new merch. So if you ever want to, support us, go for it.
The best shirt on there has my face on it, and
with a Spider-Man mask over it. Thank God. But meet the team. Let us know what you like, don't like. And at the bottom, all of our socials are listed. All you gotta do is click one. Help us. Like, share, subscribe. You can't have a reason not to miss out.
Right on. Yeah, exactly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, A.L. Kaplan, thank you so much for being here tonight. It was a blast beyond blasts. I cannot wait to have you on again. And we're going to figure that out off air, ladies and gentlemen, without the pressure of all the fans. We'll get this, don't worry. But anyways, thank you so much once again, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight to watch us have fun with a friend of ours. It is always amazing and wonderful. My name is...
Just glad to call you a friend.
Yeah. My name is Tim. This guy is Jamie. Down below is the immortally talented A.L. Kaplan. This is a Codex special, an interview, fireside chat, empty beer glasses with A.L. Kaplan. And we will
I still got some
see you next time.